Today, I'd like to talk about the missing element in biotech and pharmaceutical employer brands. The thing to start with is how some companies value employer brand and some simply don't. We can see here, according to our 2019 data, that the world's most attractive employers definitely value employer brand. They make it one of their top priorities. 89% of them make it a top priority, whereas most companies, it's 60%. Note that pharmaceuticals are much better than the average, but still not quite reaching the 89. Many companies still not committed to making employer brand a priority. And the difference there is stark when you compare the world's most attractive employer brands against all companies, specifically in the US, where you can see how many have a commitment to EVP. The difference is in their EVP. Now, when you talk about employer brand EVP, the reason why they care about it and the thing they want, the needle they want it to move, are internal and external. It is a mixture of both, which is important down the road. And lastly, since employer brand is not a function of something that one does in a silo, it works with other teams, it's good to know what other teams are understanding employer brand. Marketing gets kudos for gaining a lot of ground over the last 3 years in terms of understanding and appreciating employer brand, whereas HR and senior management have some issues and a lot of ground to make up. And while that's all 2019 data, we actually have a survey in the field right now about how employer brand is being affected by COVID, and our initial impacts are this. Everybody moved over to remote work fairly easy, surprisingly easy in a lot of cases. Budgets haven't gone away. They've simply been shifted away from in-person and event-driven stuff to a lot of focus on remote interviewing. And finally, only half of organizations involved employer brand in their coronavirus communications. Perhaps it's because they see employer brand as external only, which is concerning. If you'd like to take the survey, there's the link. I'll put it in the comments. Otherwise, in about 2 months, we'll have data for you for some of the biggest brands in the world, perhaps some of yours. I'm James Ellis. I'm an employer brand nerd. That's all you have to know about me. So let's talk about some definitions, because you got to define stuff. So employer brand is the aggregate of what other people think about what it's like to work for you based on touch points and interactions and all sorts of stuff. The employer value proposition is not the same as employer brand. It is a conceptual idea about why people should work for you. It's something you control. And I liken it to the EVP is the tent pole and the employer brand is the tent supported by that tent pole, under which you have all sorts of other recruitment, marketing, and other initiatives that work. Now, the trick is, if you want to get great people to work for you, you have to make them interested in working for you. The companies we're talking to, especially in the pharma and biotech space, are big companies, and they have a lot of things they could talk about, a lot of good reasons why people should want to work for you. So how do you choose what messages you put in the field? We'll do it this way. Let's say you have a candidate in front of you in the pharma space. Which of these 4 messages is more likely to attract them? Is it challenging work, rapid promotion, respect for your people, or secure employment? Please note that there's a great chance that all of these things are true for your brand, but you can't tell everybody everything. If you try and take everybody's attention, it doesn't work that way. So you have to pick and choose what messages are going to work. So what message do you choose? Now, of course, when you choose, the real question is, how sure are you? Is it a guess, or did you have some sort of real data to back it up on? Because data does exist. And I would say that getting this answer wrong is incredibly expensive. Think of all the things that you put messaging on and all the things that don't resonate. If they don't resonate, if that message doesn't connect with the audience, the value drops very quickly. Getting this wrong gets incredibly expensive. By the way, I didn't mention whether we were talking to a man or woman in that pharma example, which message you're going to work for. And you can see that in a minute that how you understand your audience, the better you understand your audience, demographically, psychographically, what have you, the better you are able to figure out what message is going to work. So for example, you can see here that certain messages ranked for different people. So if you pick challenging work, that's going to rank much better for men than women. If you picked rapid promotion, that's not going to rank well for either. If you pick respect for our people, that ranks much higher for women than men. And frankly, offering secure employment is going to rank very high for both. That may have been a surprise, but that is data-driven decisions. It's not a gut check, it's not a guess, it is data-driven. That leads to certainty. Now the question is, who are you trying to attract? Which means you need to understand the audience you're reaching out to. And when you understand that audience, you're going to build an employer value architecture around that person. Here you can see, fairly abstractly, it's an EVP, pillars that support it, and proof points, which we can translate this way. The EVP being what we offer, it's the message you control, the concept you control, the supporting ideas that talk about you, and you can have as many there as you want, though frankly, you shouldn't keep much more than 5, and the stories and content that prove the supporting ideas and the value. The thing is, that's fairly monolithic when you get right down to it. That presumes that your brand is the same for everyone all the time, and that's not the case. If you're trying to reach someone in, let's say, in female sales leadership, the messages you pick need to be tailored to that audience. And the data might tell you that what females in sales leadership care about are pillars 1 and 3. Therefore, you get to pick the messages you put out to that. That differs from perhaps an experienced research clinician who are going to be driven by other ideas, and you need to be able to pick those and share them with them. The other part of this kind of architecture, it allows other teams to build good content that aligns. Even if it doesn't look prima facie like the same content or it's connected, if you're creating the point-list picture that is your employer brand, knowing that other teams can add value to the painting without you having to hold their hand and knowing that it all connects the dots is incredibly valuable. At the same time, it lets you evaluate all the pieces of creative you're about to build. Is it going to be connected to the business goals? Does it tell the right story? Is it revealing your truth, and does it draw in the right people? Because what you need to do is differentiate, because there's a real problem in pharma amongst differentiation. We looked at the same data from 2019 and realized that most companies in the pharma biotech space are leaning incredibly heavily on the two concepts of inspiring purpose and innovation as the driver of their EVP. The problem is, I don't know a biotech or pharmaceutical company that does not offer innovation and inspiring purpose. That's just table stakes. The problem is, if that's all your messaging is about and all the other companies are saying the same things, how does a candidate choose? How does talent differentiate your brand from one of the other hundreds of great pharmaceutical and biotech brands? You need to get past that hygiene table stakes level messaging and get to something far deeper. And in fact, when you look at, and this is based on Google talking about the biggest pharmaceutical jobs, employer brands, these are the companies they presented, you're going to see purpose, inspiring purpose, and innovation threaded through all of these brands. And the truth is, if you don't know what these brands are, you can't tell the difference. They're very, very boring. They're very, very disconnected. They're very, very similar. They're not saying much deep. The closest I would say that is deep is the video in the bottom middle, because it's giving a lot more content, but it forces me to spend a lot of time researching this company, spending my time looking at a career site to learn about it, rather than being front and center with a message that is differentiating and connecting to an audience. Now, when we look at this information, we think of it this way. These are our 40 drivers of talent. We know based on 30 years of experience that these are the things that people care about when they're looking for a job. Yes, they care about inspiring leadership or purpose or innovation, but beyond that, if those things are table stakes, what goes beyond? How do you differentiate your brand from another brand? And this requires, again, data, not just about the talent and what they want to hear, but understanding yourself. The connection is made when you understand yourself and they understand who you are, and that's what that means. Because even beyond pharma, the truth is most employer brands are pretty, bland. They're very similar. You can see inspiring purpose ranks number 1 amongst 3 of these audiences and 4th in the other. There's a lot of commonality in these audiences, and it's very hard to differentiate these brands, and that's because of that. Now remember, when you talk about creative, that's the part that people see. How you pick what kind of creative you make is very much based on your employer brand. In fact, as a former employer brand global manager, my biggest challenge is trying to decide what piece of content should I make? What video should I make? If I can say any story, if all these things are true about my brand, how do I pick and choose what matters? How do I avoid employer blanding? And the truth is, the better I have a strong data-driven foundation, I can make choices and connect them against the architecture so that I can make sure all of my creative, all of my messaging, all of my investments in recruitment marketing and all sorts of whatnot pay out, and that's based in data. So if these are one of your top priorities, these are the channels and tactics you should be leveraging, because ultimately great employer brand work happens below the waterline. It's not the obvious stuff. People will notice the videos, people will notice the career site, they won't notice all the research, the data, all the materials, then quantitative validating and testing and certified advocates that happen below the waterline that makes great creative happen. So I want to thank you all for showing up. If you'd like to talk more about data, I have lots of data. I have lots of ways data can work. Just reach out to me. Thanks so much.